Is That a Subpoena in Your Pocket is the second episode of the third season of Wings, and there are definitely some good moments in this episode. Though, while I do love Helen, I do not love her behaviour in this one. I feel like Helen was basically in the wrong throughout it. Jo wasn't perfect, and there are definitely some surprise elements in this, and one scene in particular I want to talk about. So there will be some spoilers, but I don't have too many thoughts. We just have the one main narrative, and that works quite well. It manages to pace itself throughout the 20-something minutes. So I'll just say spoilers from now, but I won't go into too much detail. This one picks up where the previous episode left off, where Helen drove her Jeep through Joe's office and destroyed it. And he asks her for the money to cover the payment he needs for his insurance. I think it was $1,000, and she refuses to give him a check for $1,000. And there we have a problem, because this was Helen's fault, and she should rectify the problem that she caused. And Joe's not asking her to pay for everything. He's going to use his insurance, but she does need to pay something, and she won't. And Joe ultimately decides to take her to court. And I'll talk about the courtroom scene in a moment, because there are parallels with another courtroom scene, and because of how that affected me, or the way I responded to that, I was expecting similar things, and it was different, but I'll talk about that in a moment. Lowell also wants to rebuild Joe's office, but he wants to get somebody else to do it. That doesn't go according to plan, and he ends up asking Lowell to do it anyway, and Lowell manages to get a decent amount of money and a new hat. Not as much money as he would have liked, but I'm glad that Lowell got the chance to do it. Unfortunately, at the end of the episode, and I will discuss the end now, and then we'll go back to the courtroom scene, at the end, Helen displays further negative characteristics as she once again drives through Joe's new office. And I feel like that's an insult to Lowell as well. I don't know if Helen knew that it was Lowell who constructed the new office, but either way, that's not a nice thing to do, and I really just didn't love her attitude in this. However, it's not as bad as I thought. So, the courtroom scene. Joe takes her to court, and Helen, well, it looks like Helen isn't going to turn up, and then it turns out that she was just late. She comes into the courtroom with crutches, and I recently rewatched and reviewed the episode of Cheers, where Diane pretends to be on crutches in the courtroom. I won't give any more context than that. It's very obvious that she's pretending straight away, but that's what I thought was going on here. Would I have thought that had I not recently seen the episode of Cheers? Probably. I still probably would have come to that conclusion, but I was so certain that's what was happening here, and it wasn't. It turns out she did actually fall down the steps at her house that morning, and she hurt her ankle, and unfortunately Joe kind of made it worse by kicking the crutches out from underneath her, obviously to try and prove a point that she was faking, but she wasn't faking. So very awkward, but actually very well executed. The courtroom scene was brilliantly done, and absolutely not the direction I thought it was taking. My other surprise element, I guess, is that Helen did get in behind the wheel of her Jeep and drive through the office, which I hadn't expected. I couldn't remember this from the first time I'd seen this episode, but also, should she be driving? If her foot is so injured that she needs crutches, should she be driving? Would she be able to operate the pedals properly? I don't drive, so I don't know that for certain. But just for me, I wouldn't want to be thinking that she's driving when her foot is not in good condition. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but that's certainly something that stood out to me. It is a good episode. Is That a Subpoena in Your Pocket? Is enjoyable. I don't love a lot of Helen's behaviour in this one, but I did really love the courtroom scene. Definitely not at all the way I expected it to go. And it's a good episode. No complaints from me at all. Is That a Subpoena in Your Pocket? Is a good episode of Wings.